This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Higher car prices, supply chain disruption, and a general strain on the economy, all ways Donald Trump's 25% tariff aimed at the auto sector could be felt in the months to come. It came into effect at midnight Washington time. The tariffs have already led to job losses on this side of the border. Just yesterday, General Motors announced it was cutting about 750 positions at its plant in Oshawa, Ontario. And there could be more. Americans also being warned of hard times ahead. Steve Futterman reports from Los Angeles.
Here at the Twin Ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, the 8th largest port complex in the world, the harsh reality of the Trump tariffs is already being felt.
Not only do we have uncertainty, it's radical uncertainty.
Mario Cordero runs the Long Beach port. The drop-off in traffic, he says, has been slowly increasing for the last several weeks. By next week, the two Southern California ports are expecting that reduction to reach 30%. The biggest factor, not surprisingly, imports from China.
When you have a 145% tax on products from China, that actually is going to bring trade to a stop.
And it has almost everyone in the shipping and cargo and port industries worried. Are people talking about this?
Very much so.
Damian Ford is one of thousands of truck drivers who pick up goods coming off the ships. He has been doing this for the past 21 years.
Are you scared?
We all are scared. You know, if somebody said they're not scared, they're not being truthful.
At the White House this week, Donald Trump acknowledged the reduction in shipments while holding out hope for some resolution.
At a certain point, I hope we're going to make a deal with China.
Those next to feel the impact could possibly be consumers. Retail experts say American buyers could be hit with a double whammy, increased prices and empty shelves in the next 30 to 60 days. Steve Futterman for CBC News at the Port of Los Angeles.
My fellow Australians, serving as your Prime Minister is the greatest honour of my life.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese addressing a crowd of supporters in Sydney after declaring victory in the federal election. He and his Labour Party have been re-elected in what appears to be a majority government.
Today, the Australian people have voted for Australian values. For fairness, aspiration and opportunity for all. For the strength to show courage in adversity and kindness to those in need.
Albanese defeated the Conservative-leaning party whose leader, Peter Dutton, lost his own seat in Parliament. Healthcare, housing and the cost of living, the main issues in the campaign. In this country, we're getting a clearer sense of how Pierre Poilievre will continue to lead the Conservative Party, despite losing his own seat in Monday's election. Host of the House, Catherine Cullen, takes a look at how long a possible return could take and what the wait might mean for his party.
I think we made a tremendous job, but obviously not enough to win.
Conservative MP-elect Gerard Deltel is sounding fairly positive about the election results. His party increased seats, but one they lost belonged to leader Pierre Poilievre.
Obviously, I would like to see Mr. Poilievre in the House, where he belongs.
On Friday, the Conservatives revealed Poilievre would run in a by-election in the Alberta riding of Battle River Crowfoot. Damien Couric is stepping aside just days after winning the riding with 82% of the vote. In a statement, Poilievre praised Couric as selfless and said he was accepting the offer with humility and appreciation. The Liberals could wait months to call the by-election, keeping Poilievre out of the House of Commons for as long as possible. But Prime Minister Mark Carney says he won't delay.
I will ensure that it happens as soon as possible. No games, nothing, straight.
Still, there are rules and procedures to follow, and Poilievre likely won't know the results of that race until at least late June. By then, Parliament may have gone on break until the fall. Conservative strategist Kate Harrison says the news is a blow.
Losing the leader's seat is devastating. So that's the big cloud that hangs over the Tories from my perspective.
The absence of Poilievre in the House of Commons will make it harder for him to prosecute the Liberals' agenda. He won't be able to directly challenge the Prime Minister. However, he can use the time to tour the country and use his considerable following on social media to his advantage. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
And you can hear more on this and Prime Minister Mark Carney's upcoming trip to Washington on the House right after the 9 o'clock edition of World Report or wherever you get your podcasts. Liberation Day commemorations continue in Apeldoorn in the Netherlands. Canadian veterans and their families are gathered there to mark the 80th anniversary of Canadian forces freeing the Dutch from Nazi control. Crystal Gamansing reports.
I've heard stories about how difficult it was, and that difficulties, seemed to stay with my mom throughout her life.
Yvonne Penning's mother was 14 when Canadian soldiers battled their way into Apeldoorn, freeing Dutch families from the oppressive grip of Nazi occupation. Merle Wenzel of the 48th Highlanders of Canada was a part of Operation Cannon Shot. Tyler is his grandson and a lieutenant colonel with the same regiment.
I grew up knowing stories about the liberation and how the Dutch people treated him upon returning here.
The gratitude for the lives lost for freedom will be on the Lieutenant Colonel's mind as he leads the 48th Highlanders of Canada in the Apeldoorn Liberation Parade.
It was a tremendous accomplishment for the Canadian military, and it was a tremendous purpose. It wasn't to seize a piece of ground, it was to liberate an oppressed people.
80 years on, Penning, a Canadian of Dutch heritage, says the sacrifices are as relevant and as powerful as ever.
Feel very grateful for the role that Canada played, but also the direct impact it had on the life of my family and my parents.
7,600 Canadians gave their lives in the liberation of the Netherlands. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, Apeldoorn, the Netherlands.
With tensions increasing between Pakistan and India, Islamabad has test-fired a ballistic missile. Video of the surface-to-surface missile was released by Pakistan's military. The backdrop of today's launch is last week's deadly attack on tourists in India-administered Kashmir. 26 were killed in an ambush Delhi says was carried out by Pakistan-based terrorists. Islamabad denies involvement. And finally, down under. Some towns in Australia's outback are reporting a problem very unique to that part of the world. Mobs of emus wreaking havoc in their communities. Drought conditions are drawing them in search for water. The flightless birds can grow up to 2 meters tall, and when they descend on urban areas, they become unwelcome visitors. Phil Mercer has more from Sydney.
We're seeing such huge numbers of them.
Emus have flocked in large numbers into the outback town of Broken Hill, 1,100 kilometres west of Sydney. Stephanie Grieve is a wildlife rescuer. She says breeding conditions have been ideal.
I feel like there's a lot more emus coming into town than what there was, say, in 2019. We've had a really good season, so everything is bred right up, and that's where all the bigger numbers are coming from.
It's not the first time native flightless birds have invaded towns and farms.
These are some of the unfortunate farmers whose wheat crops have been trampled down by hordes of emus.
In 1932, the military was called in to exterminate thousands of the birds in Western Australia. It didn't go as planned.
How did the Australian Army lose a war to a bunch of flightless birds?
In Broken Hill, Emma McLean from Australia's National Parks and Wildlife Service believes the animals should be left alone.
Hopefully we're not inundated. We don't have a repeat of the 1930s emu wars, but they really are gentle creatures and they're just trying to do their best.
But in drought-like conditions, wildlife rescuer Stephanie Grieve says more emus could turn up looking for food and water.
If we don't get those follow-up rains, they're not going to leave. They're going to keep coming into town. It's not just going to be, more emus coming in. We're going to see more kangaroos coming in too.
Emus and kangaroos both appear on Australia's coat of arms, symbolising a nation striving forward because neither animal can easily move backwards. Phil Mercer for CBC News, Sydney.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. And if you're looking for tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, check out cbckidsnews.ca. That's cbckidsnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us here at CBC News.